Hi and welcome to Fantasy Footy Fan. Jeff here. Hope you all had a good week. Hope you did well at SuperCoach. Had a good score. With our scores in these early buy rounds, it's going to fluctuate. It's going to be a little bit up and down. It's a bit unpredictable. So not to worry if we're not doing as well. Remember, SuperCoach is a trading game, not a starting team game. So it's all about the moves that we make, the corrective trades that we make. As you can see, this week I scored a 1997. It's not great, but expect it to improve. I had a 30,000 rank, so I've started well. Obviously in round one, but round two not as great. Would have been nice to have cracked that 2,000 mark, scored. Let's see. I dropped rank by 2,356. So now my official season rank is 6,742, which is still good. I'm still happy with that. Being under 10K, it's a long season. So it's good to, try to get your team organized and sorted. And we'll get a good indication of how our team is going in round 4, where no teams have the bye. But we want to try to get our team settled. We want to be competitive in these early rounds. So still, if we're ranked really low, we want to try to make some moves to go high. If we're already high, we want to try to maintain it and navigate through the early buys so that when we come out of them, we're in a good place to really start to do our downgrading and upgrading of our rookies and so forth. So we'll see how that's going to play out for me anyway during the next few rounds. So looking at my team, and just to start with, the trades that I made. As you can see, I haven't made any changes as far as taking players off and on. We'll get to that a bit later. So the trades I made, I traded out Sam Berry and brought in Jack Carroll, and I traded out Zach Reed and brought in D'Ambrosio. So the thought behind that was Jack Carroll was a cash cow I wanted to get in because he's going to make a lot of cash. He's got a really good role. He's getting CBAs. Players and the coach are talking, really big of him as well. So he's got good job security for now anyway. So I wanted to get him in, but I didn't want to do it this week, which I could have. But I wanted to get him in early because I want to make 3 trades this week. And I didn't want to use one of those on Carroll. I knew I wanted him and I knew I wanted D'Ambrosio. So I thought, let's just get them in. Because the way I looked at it was, Berry to D'Ambrosio and Reed to Carroll, that's just a win-win. Berry's underperforming. D'Ambrosio's got a great role. And once again, he showed that by, scoring a good score of 87. Zach Reed's out, and he's out for a few weeks. So Jack Carroll, probably one of the best rookies to bring in that I didn't already have. So I'm really happy to have him, and I thought that was a good trade that's worked out. But I'll talk about my trades coming up, for the next, not just this round, but next round. And I've also got some alternative trade options as well, but we'll discuss all of that a little bit later. With my VCNC, well, we're all well aware of how Dacos performed, a reflection of how Collingwood's going at the moment probably, but a horrible score, 54. You just wouldn't have even thought that Nick Dacos could put out a score like that, considering the monster scores that he normally puts out. But yeah, very disappointing, but happy to have Tom Green. I had him captain. He's playing against West Coast, so I was happy to take his score. Obviously, it would have been nice to have had Jackson as a captain. Wouldn't have thought he would have put up a score like that, but that's just what he's capable of when he's playing without Sean Darcy. He showed it, last year. I think he had a top score of 175 maybe without Darcy in the team. So he's capable of these monster scores without Darcy in the team. So yeah, happy with Green as my captain, and I'll discuss my captain options as well later in the video. So I think what I want to do first, in part of my preparation now that we're looking at trades, players in the bubble, all that kind of thing, I always like to have a look at the injuries. And because of the injury report, of course, came out yesterday. And in looking at the injuries, I obviously want to look at relevant Supercoach players, obviously, who have got injuries, but I also want to look at players who are injured their injury and them being out of the team, or an injured player coming into the team, how that can impact Supercoach relevant players. Looking at I'm going to go through this really quickly, because some teams aren't just going to have anyone relevant. Looking at Brisbane, of course. So they've got Lachie Neale likely coming back into the team. So good to keep an eye on Neale. We're always looking for value in our picks. He's only played the one game, scored a 112, not too bad. Break even of 127, and we'll keep an eye on him. But how does that impact other players? You may have someone like Jared Lyons in the team, or thinking of maybe bringing in Jared Lyons because his break even's a negative 41. He's only 258k, and he's on the bubble. So he scored a 106 and an 81. Is he going to continue to get those CBAs and play in the midfield when Lachie Neale comes back? That's what we're not really sure about. So he's owned by 10% of teams, so that's a decent number. So if you own him, it is a bit of a decision whether you keep him. I would suggest you would, because he's got a break even of negative 41. Even if Lachie Neale comes into the team and he scores a 71, he's still making 51k. So definitely worth keeping. Whether you bring him in, and that's something we need to look at, is how does it affect your structure, bringing in a player at 258k, especially when there's maybe some other players around that price that are on the bubble that we may bring in, or even cheaper players with really high break evens. So there's a few things just to think about, but he's definitely a consideration. But we'll see, again, how Lachie Neale can affect his role. With Carlton, not really anything there. Probably the only one to think about there is Sam Walsh. So he comes back in about 2 to 3 weeks. That's what's according to the injury report. So we've got to sort of ask ourselves, well, how does that impact, say, a Jack Carroll? So Carroll is owned by 13% of teams. That could go higher this week because his break even's a negative 69. So yeah, will that impact? But by the time Walsh comes into the team, Carroll would have made a stack of cash, and then we can just assess his role as we go on. Then looking at Collingwood, nothing really there. Looking at Essendon, you got Darcy Parish coming back into the team likely this week. Zach Reed's out for 4 weeks, so if you're holding Zach Reed, what I guess how I would approach it, which is what I have done. So he's in 40% of teams at the moment. So some of us might be thinking, well, I'm just going to hold on to him. I've got more important things to worry about, and that's a decision we have to make. Like, are there more pressing issues? I guess the way I looked at it was, we're a little bit short on good defenders at the moment. Good rookie defenders anyway. So I guess I just wanted to get on to D'Ambrosio because he was just great value, especially with that high break even, and get rid of Reed. But then look at bringing Reed back into the team, because when he's fit and he's ready to go, he's got job security and he can score. Like he can score fairly well for a rookie. So I'll probably look at wait another probably 4 weeks or so when he comes back. And he plays that second game and he's on the bubble. And then, maybe look at bringing him in then if there are no other good rookies. Because I've got a few trades I want to make to correct my team. I may end up just holding Marty Hall. I'll get to Marty Hall in a moment. That's something to keep in mind. Andrew McGrath is showing a test. So is he going to play? If he doesn't, that of course helps Nick Martin. Nick Martin is an interesting one because there are a lot of coaches out there trading him out, understandably so. He's got a break even of 123. He's getting the ball, but his disposal's pretty bad. That's what's letting him down. I still think he's going to be a good pick for the year, but I do plan on trading him out. I have been big on Nick Martin, but I'll explain my trades later. But yeah, just want to restructure that. And then Jordan Ridley comes back in. Not this week, but he's back in about a week or so. So again, just something to keep in mind. He could be a good pick depending on his role and how he goes. So he actually hasn't played any games. So we'll just wait till he comes back and have a look at him. Anyway, moving on. So we've got for Fremantle, Sean Darcy comes back in about 2 to 3 weeks. So we've got to keep an eye on that if we own Luke Jackson or if we're bringing in Luke Jackson this week. I still think like 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, in those 3 weeks, Luke Jackson is going to not only score really well, but he's going to make a stack of cash. So having a look at him, his break even's only 19. If he scores a 128 this week, which he likely would or could, then he's going up another 50k. So he's going to end up being, at least in the interim while Darcy's out, going to be a our F1 or F2 even, but probably F1. I mean, he's averaging 145 at the moment. So, but yeah, good to keep an eye out for Darcy when Darcy comes back, and then maybe looking at trading Jackson out when Darcy comes back in. Carl Warner, he's saying he's out for another week. I only mention him because we're desperate for rookies, and he actually didn't do too bad in his first game. He scored a 63. So if we're desperate for a rookie, when he comes back, we'll let him play that second game, and then when he's on the bubble, we could look to bring him in if we're in desperate need for a rookie. Heath Chapman, remember we all kind of had him in our teams, so he's looking at maybe coming back within the next couple of weeks, so we can keep an eye on him. Nat Fyfe, of course, he was substituted out. It was very disappointing. He was doing very well on 69. He had 19 possessions or something like that. And then he got subbed out. I don't think it's necessarily a concern, like having to trade him out, unless you're making some other structural or tactical move. He's still got a negative 12 break even. They've already, like Longmuir's already come out and said that Fyfe is, excuse me, he's ready to go. He's fit and ready to go. He had a little bit of back soreness, so that's why they subbed him out. Probably thought, well, let's not take any risks here. That they would comfortably in the lead at that stage as well. So, so I think nothing to worry about there. He'll come back and he'll play, and he'll continue to make some money for us this week. If you own him. If you don't own him, of course, he's one to think about. Of course, another player, which I'll get into a little bit later, that everyone's thinking about around the same price point is Tom Powell, of course. Negative 47 break even. He's averaging 112. He's got the role, but I'll talk about him a little bit later. So moving on to Geelong. Dangerfield's out for another couple of weeks. So if you've got Jai Clark in your team, like as I have, I was really thinking about doing the trade from Jai Clark to Dempsey, but I think Clark's probably finding his feet a bit. Looks like Chris Scott's really wanting to expose him into the midfield and get him playing in the midfield. You can see by his role that he's actually playing a lot of time in the midfield. I'm just bringing up his stats here just for the last game. So, he had like 26% CBAs. Not 26 CBAs. Sorry, he had 35% CBAs in that round one, but then 71% CBAs in round two. So that's going up. He's going to spend more and more time in the midfield. He'll get, be a little more and more comfortable. And I think Dangerfield being out just kind of reaffirms Clark's role in the midfield, unless Chris Scott does a crazy thing and drops him for whatever reason. But anyway, I'm holding on to Clark for now. Again, I'll talk about my trades a little bit later. Actually, the only other thing with that too is that Tom Atkins and Jack Bowes are due to come into the team. that could impact Jai Clark. So even though Dangerfield's out and Guthrie's out, Atkins and Bose comes into the team, and Atkins will go into the midfield. Bose likely or could go rotate in the midfield. How that affects Clark, we'll just have to wait and see. Clark's got a break even of -3, so he's still going to earn us some cash. But yeah, so holding on to him. Looking through Gold Coast, nothing really there, except maybe Wits might be coming back. GWS, yeah, nothing really relevant with injuries there. If you've got Jacob Weir, Isaac Cumming is out for another 5 to 6 weeks, so he's got that wing role. So Weir, he went up 43k. He's got a -21 break even. Scored a 70 in the last round, which is pretty good. So yeah, if you've got him, then yeah, he's a good hold. If you don't own him, you're probably not looking at bringing him in, because there's probably a few other rooks that are probably better, and we'll go through the break evens a bit later as well. So with Hawthorn, yeah, nothing really too relevant there as far as injuries goes that I can see. Then with Melbourne, so we've got Stephen May and Jake Lever, possibly either one or both out just for this week. So that probably helps Marty Hoare. So it's likely Hoare will start on the ground in replace of one of those players. So at least that helps if you've got Marty Hoare. I mean, you're definitely not bringing him in, but he's got a -2 break even at least. So even if he scores a 31, he goes up 15k. So he's owned by 18% of teams. So there's a few teams out there hoping Hoare plays, like myself. At least earns a bit of cash, and then hopefully I can trade him to a Warner or a Reed or someone like that. But his job security is not the best. And then with North, yeah, nothing really there. By the way, I may have missed some players through here, so I apologise for that. Looking at Port, so Jason Horne-Francis, initially he was supposed to be out for like 2 to 3 weeks, but they're only saying a week. So he could actually be back next week. So if you own him, let's have a look. So he's owned by 5% of the team, so maybe a few might have traded him out. He's got a break even of 56, but he scored a 112 in that game. And even like looking at Ollie Wine's role, I think Horne-Francis comes back into the team and ends up being that third midfielder with Ollie Wines rotating through. So yeah, he's one to keep an eye on. Let's just see how he goes when he comes back and how he goes in his second game, because forward 33k of course is a bit pricey. But if he is going to average that 100 to 105, which is what I do predict for him this year, then he could be a good pick. No early buys for him, and he's got that good round 13 buy as well. And then moving on to Richmond, so we all know about Gibcus, he's out for the season. Hopper's out as well, 4 to 6 weeks. So how does that, and then even James Trezise, who was going to play in the midfield a bit, he's out for 4 to 6 weeks as well. So how does it affect, maybe some of the other Richmond players that we're thinking about? Seth Campbell doesn't really play in that role, but it sort of shores up their security in the team. But yeah, not a lot of relevant Richmond players this year. So moving on to St Kilda, we've got Hunter Clark's out for 3 to 4 weeks. Brad Crouch is now out for 6 to 8 weeks. I only mentioned that because it for those that own Bonner. Now it's not like Bonner will play in the midfield, but he didn't have a great score last round. Obviously Sinclair is back, and that's what I was actually really worried about. I mentioned it in my last video with Bonner. I just didn't want to jump on because I wanted to see how he played with Sinclair in the team. And basically Sinclair took back his role, and Bonner only scored a 49. So, but this week is a bit different because maybe Sinclair now goes into the midfield with Crouch being injured. He didn't really last week though, when Crouch wasn't even in the team. So yeah, this is a concern I have with Bonner. Now he may come out and do really well, but he's definitely not a player that I'm looking at. If you own him, that's the decision you got to make. Like, do you trade him out? He's 284k, only a little bit more than that, and you could bring in, say, a Tom Powell who's got a much better role, or you could get one of these rookies that are must-have rookies. Like, maybe you don't have a McKercher or a Sanders or a Sharp or a Carroll, or a probably those are the main ones, I guess. Even a Reed, I guess. So these are the players that if you don't have, then maybe you trade Bonner down or trade him up, or you just keep him and really hope that he gets back to how he played in round one and gets that roll back. It's a tough decision, that one. With Sydney, so this is an interesting one. So Taylor Adams is a test, so he might actually come back this week, or possibly even next week. So we've got to see, how does that impact Isaac Heaney? How does that impact even James Jordan? Does Jordan get? Jordan's playing primarily on the wing, but does Jordan get less time in the midfield? Having a look at his CBAs. So let's see. So he's not really getting much CBAs. In round one, he got 46% CBAs, but then in round two, he only got 9 CBAs. He still put out an 88. So he's predominantly playing across that wing. If you look at his heat map, he's playing along the wing. So Taylor Adams being in the team shouldn't affect James Jordan. However, it could affect Isaac Heaney. So this will be a watch this space when Adams comes into the team. A few of us had Adams in our team as well. So here's another one to actually look at in our forward line after he plays these 2 games to see where he's at and if he is actually performing well. But of course, with Adams, it's that massive injury risk that you're taking. And then with West Coast, nothing really there. You got Dom Sheed due to come back in 1 to 2 weeks. Does that impact Harley Reid's position in the midfield? It might even be a good thing. Maybe they move Reid to half back and he ends up getting more ball that way. But we'll have to see. Western Bulldogs, of course, Nick Caulfield, he's out for 12 to 14 weeks. That's a real shame. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention was Duday. I think he did his ACL again, poor guy. So he's out for the rest of the year. How that impacts Brisbane with any relevant players, I don't think it impacts really anybody. But yeah, just sad news to hear about Duday, and then sad news for Caulfield. Being out the game for so long, comes back, just raises his arm for a spoil, and then does his shoulder. So that's just sad for the guy. But yeah, we if you own him, you're obviously trading him out to a rookie on the bubble, or depending on your structure, you may end up holding him and then maybe trading him next week, whatever it may be. But either way, he's got to go at some point. And yeah, that's all the injuries and how they impact some of the SuperCoach players. So looking at now how the games went and some of the relevant players that we own and relevant players that we could also bring in. Starting with the St Kilda and Collingwood game, which obviously there's some relevance there. Actually, no, even before we go through that, Brisbane and Carlton had the bye, so you've got a few players relevant there that are coming back. So as I mentioned, Jack Carroll, he's one that we really need to consider bringing into our teams if we don't already own him. Fantasia, we won't about him. So George Hewitt, I don't know if there's anyone that really owns him, but we all expected him to do better. He's only 2% of the team, so I won't bother with Hewitt. And it's probably about it. And then Zach Williams, of course, is the other one. So Zach Williams is -2 break even, 216k. I mean, obviously, if you don't have D'Ambrosio, you're bringing in D'Ambrosio first before Williams. But Williams, I think, will get better. He scored a 73 and then a 51. But I think he will just get, he's sort of getting a feel for it, getting back into it, and he's got the good role, he's got the job security, so obviously you're holding him if you own him, and he's a potentially you could bring him in if you're desperate for players in your defense. So he's on the bubble, so just keep him in mind. And then for Brisbane, there's not really anyone. I mentioned Jared Lyons already, and Lachie Neale, you wouldn't be bringing him in. Wait till he plays another game and then probably see after that. But probably Lyons is the main one there that you're kind of looking at. Whether you're going to bring him in or keep him. Well, you'd keep him, but whether you bring him in. But then moving to the game, so looking at the St Kilda Collingwood game. So Wangan Millera he's the one that I think probably a few are looking at bringing him in this week. So he's 101 and then a 120 against Collingwood. He's obviously got the role. We did predict he was going to have a better year. We think about last year and how his average, I think, went up by about 10 points in the last few games that he played, last 10 games or 5 games or something like that. So with the new role from last year, and now he's continued that role. But he's doing well as we expected, and he's got a break even of 48. And if you've got him, obviously you're really happy with how he's playing, but he's definitely a consideration to bring in. You might be looking at trading Young out and bringing in Wanganeen Millera in. That's a great trade. Definitely worth it with Wanganeen Millera. Jack Steele, of course, is the other one. He just continues to get back to that form he showed from a few years ago. So it's a 119 and a 120 for him. He's looks like he's going to average that 115. And I said this last week, but he's 11 tackles and 10 contested possessions. So he's actually doing really, really well, playing like he used to play. And I think if you're looking at bringing him in, he's definitely a worthwhile pick. And if you got him, you're pretty happy with that. Rowan Marshall, so he's one that obviously, he's a premium, so you're probably sticking with him because he is playing fairly well. But let's have a look here. So a 127 and a 106. So owned by 7% of teams. So you're keeping him, but you're probably not bringing him in because there's probably better value in the rucks. So Winhager was one. I actually had Winhager in my team, and he, and I expected him to play this role, particularly the role that he played in this last game in round 2. So I'm just bringing up his stats. I just wanted to see his CBAs. So. So looking at his CBAs, he had where is it? So 83% CBAs in that last game. So that's what they were expecting, or we were expecting from him, was that he was actually going to play that midfield role. And now with Brad Crouch out of the team, I reckon that's certified his role in the midfield from now on. So here's one I think to have a think about. If you're wanting a mid-pricer in your defense, maybe you think, I'll go from Young to a Winhager and then use that cash elsewhere. That's an option as well. But he's got a 15 break even. He scores a 72. He goes up by 26k, and I reckon he could very well average that 90 to 100. And if he does that over the next few weeks while Crouch is out, then I think he's a great option to bring in, depending on your structure. I mean, looking at my team, I wouldn't bring him in. I'll mention later, what I'm going to do with Powell and Young. But I'm pretty happy with my defense for now. There's no real move for me to bring Winhager in. But if it fits your structure, I think he's definitely a worthwhile option to bring in. And then looking at the rest of the team, so Sinclair, he only scored a 78. So Again, he's one where we really want to wait till probably he bottoms out. Break even of 153. He's just played the one game, obviously, but we'll wait till I think he bottoms out, and then he could be one that we could upgrade to a little bit later on. Then Riley Bonner, I've already spoken about, 49. Darcy Wilson, so he's continuing to do well. He's at a break even of negative 51. Is he a must-have? Maybe not, depending on your structure. If you own him, you're obviously still keeping him, but you've got players like Dempsey and so forth who have really high break-evens who you could bring in. But yeah, obviously if you don't have him, depending on your structure, you could bring him in. He's got the job security. He's got a good role. So he'll definitely make us some cash. Moving on to Collingwood, and obviously the talking point here was Nick Dacos. Really disappointing, obviously, game from him. He dropped 22k, but his break even's 167. He's going to lose more money. Now, if you have him, do you trade him out? Now, there's other options out there to be bringing in. Like you go with Luke Ryan. I think he's probably a pod. You could go with Harry Sheezel if you don't have Sheezel. You could let's have a look here to see what are the options. So yeah, Sheezel, Stewart. You go Tom Stewart. And then maybe bring in Dacos later. That's probably a bit of an aggressive take. With what to deal with Dacos, but I think most will probably hold him, I imagine. He's owned by 79% of teams. It's so high. I would say that all the teams that have him, I think most are holding. I know some are trading, just from listening to some of the content creators. There's some and some of the podcasts out there. Some are looking at trading before he loses a lot of money. But Dacos is one of those players where, yes, he also has Brisbane coming up, and then he has the potential Finn McGuinness tag and then the bye. So I can see why. I definitely wouldn't argue against trading him out. I can see the tactic behind that and strategy. With a break even of 167, he's going to drop money. You've got to get Nick Dacos in at some point, because he's likely going to be our D1 or D2. So we got to get him in. So you're banking on him losing enough cash and then being able to trade back into him again. So you're making a couple of trades to do that. So you just got to weigh out whether that's worth it. For me, I am holding because there's other areas in my team that I really want to strengthen, and I know Nick Dacos will come good. For the rest of Collingwood, Reef McInnes, he's one to just keep an eye on. So he actually did okay. I reckon his job security is not too bad. He's got a negative 24 break even. He's played just the one game, scored a 72. I reckon he's short up that forward line. I think Collingwood were tossing up with McStay out who would play at full forward, McInnes or Ash Johnson. Ash Johnson got given his opportunities, got given 2 games, and he really did not perform well at all. McInnes has come in and kicked 3 goals. So, and I think they just like the way he plays. So I think let's see how he goes again this week. And, he could be one to bring in. Maybe if you've got a Sexton, you could trade Sexton to him. But then again, we'll talk about Sam Darcy as well a little bit later on. But that's probably about it. Finlay McRae, I've mentioned before, keep an eye out for him. I think he eventually is going to get regular games, especially with the way Collingwood's playing. He's got a 46 break even. He's only 152k. If he's actually named in the starting team, then he's probably going to get like a 70 or an 80 at least, and then I reckon he'll have job security after that. So just one to keep an eye on. If he's got low ownership, I don't really want to talk about go. Yeah, 3% owned. So yeah, I won't talk about him too much. But yeah, he's had a shocker. Maybe wait till he bottoms out and starts picking up his form again. But moving on to the next game, that was Adelaide and Geelong. And Jordan Dawson. So again, one that you're going to consider if you've got him. Are you trading him out? Break even of 189. Yeah, I mean, obviously he's much better than that, but yeah, maybe he's one to trade out if you don't have a Sarong or a Butters, for example. Trade out to one of them. Maybe wait till Jordan Dawson bottoms out. I don't think it's like a Dacos situation. I think with a break even of 189, I mean, he could really drop in price. Now he's projected to score 117 this week, and if he gets that, he drops 33k. But again, yeah, one of those tough ones where do you trade him out? Or do you hold and maybe fix up more important areas in your team? So he he still had like 26 possessions. He had 12 tackles, and he had 7 contested possessions. So he's doing okay as far as getting the ball, but his disposal efficiency was like only 61%, and that's what really hurt him. So he's better than that. We know he's a good kick. So I think that's a bit of an anomaly, his first 2 games, and I reckon he'll get better than that. But I think if you don't own him, you're keeping a close eye on him for when he bottoms out. So Matt Crouch, so he's on the bubble, and he's probably one to bring in. He's got that great midfield role. He's getting a ton of the ball. Just having a look at some of his numbers here. So just in that last game, he got 37 possessions, as usual, 24 handballs, but 12 contested possessions as well. He's easily their best player at the moment. And then, he's 68% CBAs in round 1, 82% in round 2. So he definitely is a player worth bringing in at his price, which is only 490k. So he's going up 35k if he gets a 112 this week, break even of 36. So someone to have a think about. Excuse me. Then moving on to Rory Laird. So Laird again did quite well. Are you bringing him in on the bubble? So it's an option, 124 and 120. So, maybe you go Dawson to Laird. So he's playing well. We're all worried about Laird playing up forward. But, if you got him, pretty happy with that. But he is an option to bring in. For the rest of the players in that team, so Sam Berry, you're trading out. Get rid of him. And then moving on to Geelong, so Tom Stewart I mentioned, he's definitely an option. A 134 this week, so that's fantastic. Max Holmes still got that role at halfback, scored a 95, and I think he's he might be one of those ones you could think about bringing in. Only 5% owned, but if you own him, you're obviously happy with that. Break even of 46, so he's still got some cash to make, and you could easily upgrade him a little bit later to a premium. Then going through the rest of the list, so Oliver Dempsey. So Dempsey is the one that if you're going to bring in, you bring in this week. Negative 71 break even. I got to watch that game, the Adelaide Geelong game, and he looked really good. I love his role. He's just roaming up and down that wing, dropping into defense, going into the forward line as well. If he gets a 61 this week, he goes up 60k. I reckon if you're bringing in any rookie this week, if you do not own Dempsey, then you're probably bringing in Dempsey or Carroll. I like both of their roles. If your team is in good, you're happy with your team and you're just adjusting rookies, Carroll and Dempsey, or Sharp even if you don't have Sharp. But yeah, so he's looking really good. A score of 96 and then a 59 in the last round. That was obviously against Adelaide in Adelaide. Geelong got the win in the end, but maybe it was a bit more challenging for him. But yeah, he's one to be looking to bring in this week if it's part of your plans, if you can bring him in, if it fits your structure. And then beyond that, so Jai Clark, we already spoke about him. So he's one I'm keeping, but I can see you trading him out to a Dempsey. Sean Manor, so he scored a 57 in 69% game time. He looks really good. Like watching that game, he just looks good. You just wish that he had a bit more game time and he was on the ground a bit more. I think if you've got him, I think you're holding. I don't think you're bringing him in. Negative 20 break even. And he's scored now a 29 and a 57, but I think he's going to be scoring more than that. We all know his numbers from last year under VFL. Yeah, good to keep an eye on him. But if you own him, I think you're keeping him. To the North and Fremantle game, I'll try and get through these things as quick as possible. Sheasel, all good. Jump on him. You're 113 this week. Jump on him if you can. I'm bringing him in this week. Tom Powell. So here's the other one. That's the one that I think I mentioned Tom Powell before. The one I think that's going to be brought in this week, and we'll look through the most trades in and out and so forth later. But 95 and now 129. He's got the role, and he's playing in the midfield, and he was a ball magnet beast in his as a junior. And now Clarkson's just playing him in the midfield. Simkin played in the game last week, but it didn't look like Simkin affected Powell's role. Simkin's kind of playing that half forward role. But 93, so 76% CBAs in round 1, 93% CBAs in round 2. So he's just primed to bring in. Negative 47 break even. Even if he just scores an 80 this week, he goes up 58k, and he's averaging 112. I'm actually looking at bringing him in this week, and I think he'll not only score well for us, but be a great cash cow as well, and a nice easy upgrade to a premium forward in time. So he's the one I think to look out for. Sherry's the other one as well. You might be doing a Grundy to Sherry trade this week maybe, or or if you've got him, obviously you're pretty happy. But 107, 108 looks like he's going to average around that 100 mark, 100 to 105 I think for Sherry this year. I think with Grundy, he got that little boost of 16k. Then you're bringing in Sherry, and you're actually pocketing about 90k by bringing in Sherry, trading Grundy to Sherry. So that is an option. I'll explain. I'm actually trading Grundy out this week, but not to Sherry. I'll explain what I'm doing with that a little bit later. So LDU, who I've got, 134 break even. Obviously, you're not bringing him in, but you're holding if you own him. So Zane Dersma, I think he's one of those other rookies, expensive rookie, but negative 14 break even, 71 and a 53. If you've got him, then you're keeping him, but I don't think you're bringing him in. Zach Fisher, I think he's still a hold if you've got him. He scored a 101 this week. I don't think you're trading him out, and probably not bringing him in either, I guess. You'd probably pick a Powell before a Fisher. Colby McKercher, he's a must-have. So if you don't own him, you're bringing him in. He needs to be a priority. Toby Pink, I know that a few have brought in Toby Pink. Just having a look at the most trades in, he's second on the list. So D'Ambrosio, understandably. Pink, Powell. There you go. So I'm not surprised that they're the main ones. And Sarong and Malera, that all makes sense why everyone's bringing him. Some have gone Darcy a bit early, but obviously the ones they're trading out, Hayden Young, and we'll get to Hayden Young in a moment. Obviously Caulfield, Gibcus, injured, Sexton on the bye, Reed injured, so that all makes sense. So Toby Pink, so I can understand bringing him in because we're pretty low on defenders. Then I think that's probably it. And Caleb Sarong, obviously, if you can bring him in this week. Now, you got to remember with Sarong and Butters, just to have the right mindset here. So let's say, for example, with Sarong. Now, he's scored a 170 and a 141. Now, if you've owned him, that's awesome. And you've got those scores in your team. If you're thinking of bringing him in, you've got to ignore those scores, because you're not benefiting from those scores. You're bringing him in as a premium to keep for the year. So you've got to ask yourself from now on in, at 621k, what is he going to average for the year? Is he worth bringing in? So he's priced at an average of about hold on, let me just see. I could have brought it up then, but I just hold on. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that. So let's say 621, and I think it was priced at an average of about 110, 105 or something like that. But I think you've got to ask yourself, well, what what is he going to average for the year? Now, I've always said that I feel Sarong, and this is the thing, I've had him in my team all season, and as I mentioned last week, I took him out at the last minute, and now I'm gutted, but I want him in my team. I've said all along that Sarong will average 115 to 120. So I think he is worth bringing in if it fits your structure. Is he worth a sideways trade? Maybe you're going off a high premium who hasn't scored well, like a Dawson. Is he worth it? Well, you've got to ask yourself from here on in, who averages more, Dawson or Sarong? And is it worth a trade to bring in? So they're just some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. Luke Jackson, again, we spoke about him already. What a gun. Without Darcy, he's just awesome. Jordan Clark is the other interesting one. So, he's averaged really well. He's only in 1% of teams, so he would be a pod, but he's scored a 108 and a 119 in his last 2 games because he's got that Hayden Young role, and I think he's a player that's worth considering bringing into your team. How the Hayden Young will affect Jordan Clark. With Hayden Young in the midfield, it really helps Jordan Clark out because he takes the Hayden Young role. Now, Longmuir said that Hayden Young could likely play a run with role this week. Now, Fremantle, sorry, I'm just trying to find out who they've got. So Fremantle this week have Adelaide at home. So I think he mentioned something about having a run with role with Jordan Dawson. So if that's the case, now we know how Young did last year, towards the end of last year when he had those run with roles. 4 games he played, averaged really well, but also helped to shut down the players that he was on. So if he plays a run with role with Dawson, that could be another low score for Dawson. And a really good score for Young. So, yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out on that game, I think. So Luke Ryan, yep, he's just gunning it at the moment. He could be worth bringing in. So he's 611, but he's got a break even of 54. He's averaging 146, a 165 and a 127. So I think maybe he's also benefiting too from some of that structural change in defense. So, he's not going to average that for the year, but again, someone to consider bringing in. He's only owned by 5% of teams, so maybe a slight pod there for him. Andrew Brayshaw, yep, another good game, 123, he scored. And are you bringing him in this week? Probably not. I would have thought. 102, 123, a lot of other players playing well with better value. So Hayden Young. Okay, so I think Hayden Young, understandably, you'd want to trade him out. He's averaging 66. So he's scored a 70 and a 62. His disposal efficiency has not been good, hence his scores. He's still getting a bit of the ball, but he's also making clangers. He lost 32 points just in clangers. He made 8 clangers. So that's the problem. And Hayden Young, he's better than that too. But at a break-even of 165, maybe we're jumping off. We're going to a Wanganin Malira, or we're going to a Sheasel or a Stewart or someone like that, or maybe even someone even cheaper to get some cash. So it's understandable, to jump off Hayden Young. Unfortunately, that's been a disappointing pick. Jeremy Sharp, is he a must-have? Maybe. He's got the job security playing across the wing. Negative 63 break-even. He scored a 70 and a 63. So I would say if you can bring him in and you don't have, your Carrolls, your Dempseys, players like that, then, or your McKerches and Sanders. Roberts, could you bring him in? He's 225 now. Roberts is like a negative 35 break-even, but we'll get to him in a moment. But so there's a few there, to think about. Hawthorn, obviously, James Sicily, you're not looking at bringing him in. But he's got that massive break even, so you're probably jumping off him if you own him. 195 break even, so he had a good game, scored a 123. So you might want to put faith in that and hold on to him. But I think that's 195. You're looking at him to hopefully drop in price and then bring him in later. D'Ambrosio, yeah, you're looking at bringing him in. An 87, 224k, averaging 104. You'd want to be bringing him in. Amon, he's been a bit disappointing. Was hoping to get more out of him. John Newcomb, you're jumping off. He's if you own him, then you're definitely trading him out. Another 66 from him. And so I'm just going to race through these. Sorry, we're already gone for 50 minutes, and I'll try and get through this as quick as I can. Petrarca, obviously you're keeping him. Then they got the bye as well in round 6. He's got a 146. Max scoring a 113. It's all great. Salem a 77, so he dropped a little bit there. So Clayton Oliver, so he's obviously one that you're keeping a close eye on, if you don't own him. So he dropped 48k. He's got a break even of 168. Now, obviously, he's better than that 92 average. So, a 90, a 105, and an 82. So he'll get back to it. He'll get back to really good form because, in that game, he only had the 23 possessions. But, a few clangers, poor disposal. I think he's going to get better than that. But, yeah, you're definitely keeping an eye on him, waiting till he bottoms out. And then as soon as he does, I'm jumping on. Blake Howes, yep. That's awesome. He's doing well. Be happy with that. Jack Billings, a score of 70. Not great. That's the thing with sort of players like a Billings. I think it's going to be an up and down for him. Like he had that massive score of 119 and then gets a 69. So I think he's going to get up and down scores. Look, he's only 271k. Only went up 28k. Break even of negative 34. So he could be a worthwhile pick. I think most probably be going for Powell, though. Caleb Windsor, only a 40. It's a bit disappointing, but you're probably holding if you own him. And Marty Hoare, mentioned him before. It's disappointing, but hopefully, he plays this week. And then, Sydney and Essendon, so Goulden, that's awesome, but it has a bit of a high break even. So Heaney, you're holding. Grundy could be trading. He scored a 99. And Matt Roberts, a 94. So you're holding on to him. Could be an option to bring in. James Jordan doing his job, 88 this week from him, which is great. Playing across that wing. And then moving over to Essendon. So Zach Marriott, the 132. That's great. Will Setterfield. I think he was a test for this week. I don't know if you're bringing him in anyway. But Nick Martin. So, there's a lot trading him out. But I can see it both ways. I can see why you'd hold on to him. He had 31 possessions. We just had a few clangers. So he lost 20 points in clangers. So had 5 clangers. So, he's getting there. But I can also see trading him out. I am, if you're looking at keeping him, I'm all for that. But I think for the way I want to structure my team now, I am looking at upgrading Martin. But I know I'm probably going to regret that. Knowing, he'll probably put out these 120s over the next few weeks, and then everyone who's traded him out is going to regret it, but including myself. Looking at the rest of Essendon, you're probably not considering too many from there, so just chugging along here. Western Bulldogs, Gold Coast, usual suspects, English Bont, all doing well. So Sam Darcy, so he's the one that we need to obviously keep in mind. So he scored a 109. And he's playing. He dropped a bit in defense, was playing in the ruck a little bit, had 12 hit outs, and then was also going into the forward line. He kicked 2 goals. So he had a great game. Rory Lobb was dropped. So what happens there? Does Lobb come in and Darcy go out? We're really hoping not. We're hoping Darcy plays again this week, and then we bring him in when he's on the bubble, and maybe trade him out. Like if you've got a Sexton, maybe you trade him from a Sexton to a Darcy, and you're making 50 odd K there. But yeah, he's one obviously keep an eye on, and. So if you got Booker Kamas, probably not bringing him in, but he scored a 65, and then Gallagher 39. And Caulfield we already spoke about. So Gold Coast, so Miller. So this is the thing; these players that are on the bye now, like a Whitfield, a Green, a Miller. Strategy is different strategies. Trade them out, or keep them, hold them, and then bite the bullet this week. and then sort of pounce in round 4, make up for it in round 4 when there's no buys. So with Miller, another 115, did really well. Raul, obviously a 99, but he's still, still a beast. 25 possessions, 15 contested. So if you brought him in, you're holding. And then, all these guys are on the buy, so you're probably not going to be doing anything about it. The only question is, do you trade? So if you've got a Will Powell like I do you trade maybe an upgrade to a Sheasel? Sam Flanders, you're probably holding. I don't think you'd be trading him. Buderick, if you had him, you'd be trading. And then Sexton, again, another one. If you've got him, you might be thinking of trading to a Dempsey or even bringing Darcy early. Tom Berry was a real disappointment. Everyone was jumping on him, but that's the risk with these forward pressure players, is that their scores can be so unpredictable. So he only scored a 24, which is really disappointing. So if you own him, if you brought him in, you may end up feeling like you want to trade him out. Can understand that. Because I think he still would have gone up in cash. So he went up 44k, still has a negative 10 break even. So look, I think if you've got him, you're probably holding, but I don't know if you're bringing him in. Why would you anyway? He's got to buy. So Richmond and Port Adelaide, not a lot to talk about for Richmond here. I think Taranto, you're probably keeping an eye on because his break even is so high. He's going to bottom out, and then we'll look to bring him in probably after his buy. I don't know if you've got Seth Campbell in your team, but if you do, you'll be pretty happy. He scored an 80. I reckon he's got that job security. You're not looking at bringing him in at 174, but negative 12 break even. So I think you'd be pretty happy with that if you own him. And that's probably it for Richmond. For Port, Zach Butters, man, what a gun! Just so bummed. I had Sarong and Butters in my teams pretty much all pre-season and took them out. And that's always the way, you make these changes. But I'm going to be looking at trying to bring in Butters and Sarong. Just it does look like I will be sideways trading a bit, but I think for me, the way I'm looking at it, my mindset is that these are players that at the last minute I just made some really bad changes. It hasn't been too bad because my score's not too bad. But Butters and Sarong I was really strong on. I really feel they're getting 115 to 120 averages this year, and I really want to get them in at the start of the year before they go up too much. The question is who do you bring in, like Sarong or Butters? And I think you got to look at it from that money perspective. Where are you saving the most money? Look at the trades you're bringing in this week and next week. And that's what I've done for my trades, which I'll go through in a moment. Wines, so he's okay. I think just okay, especially with Horn Francis out. I think when Horn Francis comes back in, that might impact Wines' score. Connor Rozee. So see, Connor Rozee, I've got in my team. That was a compromise I made. I went down from Sarong to Rozee so I could use that cash elsewhere. And now I wasn't strong on Rozee because I never even considered him for the whole preseason. I was really strong on Sarong and Butters. So that may be the sideways trade that I make, possibly next week, depending on how Rozee goes this week. Because his break even's like 136, so I'm hoping he has a big game this week, and he scored a 90 this week. And then that's probably about it. Houston, if you've got Houston, that's good. Bergman's been doing all right as well. And then West Coast and GWS. With West Coast, Elliot Yeo, so happy with that. He had a great game, scored 110. Really happy with him. Not really. Harley Reid, you're still holding on to him. Maybe you're bringing him in if you've got all the other rookies. And that's probably it. I know McGovern's doing really well at the moment, but at his age and so forth, you're probably just not thinking about him. With the Giants, now Green, I own him and I'm holding him. I know some might be trading to avoid the buys, but I'm going to hold. Lockie Whitfield, same situation. Do you trade or hold? And then Harvey Thomas, a 107. So he could be the other rookie that you might consider bringing in. But he's still gone up quite a bit. Negative 53 break even. Went up 57k. He's now 175. Probably not bringing him in this week, obviously. So all these players, if you had Himmelberg, you're probably trading him out. He's been a disappointment. Really thought better that he would do much better. And then lastly, that was actually the last game. Sorry about that. West Coast and GWS. Yeah. So sorry, taken a long time to go through all of that, but it's important to go through these players, see what they got, and then consider whether we're bringing them in or not. And I think now what I'll do, I'll just go through some of my trades that I'm actually going to look at this round. So initially, I was thinking of trading Grundy to Sherry, and then Clark to Dempsey, and then Powell to Sheasel. That's my conservative trade, but I've decided against that. I want to try and be a bit more aggressive with my trade. So this is what I'm planning to do. So I'm planning to trade Grundy. So swap Grundy down. Look, so Grundy's break evens, 112 now. He's made 16K. He hasn't been as great. He's going to have up and down scores. I think he'll still be okay. But he's got the bye coming up. So I'm going to trade him down to and swap him with Jackson. And I'm going to bring in Powell. So that'll actually give me quite a bit of cash left over. So with that cash, I'm going to do a little bit of upgrading. So Young's been a big disappointment. So I'm going to go Young to Sheasel. And then Martin, I'm going to upgrade to Sarong because I really want to get Sarong in my team. And I reckon that will, shore me up for round 4 and beyond. But what it means is I'll still have Powell and Green and Miller. So Williams, I'll bring on for Powell. Carroll, I'll bring on for Green, and then Sharp, I'll bring on for Miller, with Clark as an emergency. I'll just put Hoare as my emergency in defence, and then Sexton, I'll probably look at trading him to Darcy next week, but I'll bring on Wilson. Actually, I might look at doing a bit of a loophole here because I don't know whether Wilson or Cadman will actually score. So I think who plays first? GWS. What am I talking about? Cadman. He's got the bye. Sorry about that. It looks like it's Wilson. So that's what I'll do. So I'm going to take a big hit this week. So I'm going to have Powell, Green, and Miller out. And that's not ideal. It's not what you want. My initial plan was to trade Powell for Sheasel, but that I've made a change to that. I'm still thinking. This is like what I'm likely going to do, but I'm still thinking about it. I think next week what I'll probably do is actually not trade Sexton because Clark's break even is -3. Sexton's is -6. So either I'll trade Clark to swap with Wilson to Sam Darcy, or I'll trade Sexton to Sam Darcy. And I may end up going Rosie to Butters. I don't know. I'm still thinking about that. This is all for next week. But for this week, I think I'll be doing the Grundy to Powell, Young to Sheasel, Martin to Sarong. I'll hold Powell. I'm going to take a big hit, but I feel like I can make up for it with my team for next week, having Tom, Powell, Sheasel, and Sarong in my team, ready to go for next week, with Green and Miller and Powell also coming back into the team. So I feel like it's maybe taking one step back to go 2 steps forward. That's just the way that I'm looking at it. In looking at trades in players to bring in, I've already discussed that, but I think a good way to look at things as well is looking at the break evens. D'Ambrosio has a -82, Dempsey a -71, Carroll a -69, McKercher -68, Sharp -63. You're looking at bringing in these players. So I'll probably miss out on Dempsey, but I've got these other players, and then I'll be bringing in Sam Darcy instead of, say, bringing in Dempsey next week. Just always good to look at these break evens. If you've got, obviously you would be if you've got SuperCoach Plus, but if you don't, then you're probably looking at at videos like this where you can actually see some of the break evens. Tom Powell, he's up there as well, negative 47. So, you're looking at some of these plays to bring in, but probably more the top end here. But then on the other end as well, you're looking at some of these players with the massive break evens that you're waiting to bottom out. So James Sicily at 195, Jordan Dawson 189, even John Newcomb 179 if he can get his form back. Oliver is a 168, Dacos is a 167, Hayden Young a 165, Libba 160, Sinclair 153, and even you're looking at Dunkley 151 maybe. And then Bont 148, but he's actually doing well. Even English is a 148, but they're both scoring really well. So that's the thing. We're looking at these break evens, keeping a close eye on them of who to bring in and who to bring out. And lastly, I'll probably look at VCing. Who was I going to? So I'm probably going to VC Sarong, I think, because I'm bringing in Sarong. Or maybe VC Sheasel, and then into Sarong might be an option, or Jackson. No, Sarong, probably I'll captain Sarong, but probably VC, I think Sheasel against Carlton. That's probably not 100% confirmed. I will... Yeah, still kind of deciding on that. Maybe even Max Gawn might be an option against Soldo, or even Heaney against Richmond. Actually, that even might be an option, especially if Taylor Adams doesn't come into the side. So look, thanks again for watching and listening. Really appreciate it, guys. I'm hoping that this has been helpful in players that you're considering to trade out and trade in. It's a really big week this week because you got a lot of players on the bubble, so you've got to get your trades right, your rookies right. Obviously your rookies are vitally important, so you got to make sure you got the best rookies that are making you the best cash, so you can downgrade and upgrade, and then upgrade your mid prices and other players, other rookies to premium. So hopefully you all have a really good week, a good SuperCoach week, and I'll catch you again next week with my round 3 review. See ya.